Hi, this is Regina Davis, NARUC's Director of Communications, and we're so pleased today to have a chat with Itron CEO Tom Deitrich, who's going to walk us through some of Itron's important technologies, how they benefit consumers as well as utilities, and he'll share his insights on the Infrastructure Act. But before we get into that, Tom, I want to welcome you and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Great pleasure.
Sure. So before we get into our questions, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to Itron?
Okay, happy to do so. I grew up through R&D organizations in the telecom equipment space, so Ericsson, for example, and then semiconductors. Made chips for various pieces of equipment for a number of years. But I came to Itron in 2016 as the Chief Operating Officer, and then jumped into the CEO role in 2019. But I was absolutely fascinated by the technology that the company develops, and even more so by the purpose of the company. That the things that we do, technology and services, really help utilities, cities all around the globe deliver resilient and reliable, cost-effective services. They're really the foundation of a modern society, and I can think of no more noble mission than having the opportunity to do that. So get to work on a lot of really interesting technology with interesting people, and there's some greater good that comes from all of it.
Wow, that sounds great. And we always appreciate the support that we get from our sponsors, especially our long-standing supporters such as Itron. So can you tell us why it's important for you to partner with NARUC?
Sure. I view NARUC very much as a leading organization, 100 and whatever it is, 25-year legacy there, with NARUC doing a great job representing utility commissions as you work to properly regulate our direct customers, all of the IOUs and utility cities that are out there. We've sponsored NARUC, as you pointed out, for 20 years now. It's a critical forum for exchange of ideas and understanding really what are the key issues for the commissioners and how do they think about it, and to the extent that we can lend a voice to hear some of the new technologies and ways that it might be able to benefit society as well as ensure that we've got cost-effective and equitable solutions out there. So we're just pleased to have the opportunity to do it, and I always enjoy the interaction with the team. Louisville this year was just great.
Great. And for those who are unfamiliar, you touched on the mission of Itron. Can you talk a little bit more about your customers and how you serve them?
Sure. We provide technology and solutions to a little more than 8,000 utilities all around the globe. Obviously, the U.S. is our largest market. And as I mentioned, we're really aiming to develop those solutions to improve resiliency, reliability, efficiency for all of the customers and the communities they serve. Our offerings, if you will, can be categorized into three big groups: devices, meters and sensors, things like that; networks, which is the communication infrastructure to collect all of that data that comes out of those devices, and then securely and robustly move it to be processed. And then the third piece of it is outcomes. And outcomes might be a little bit of an abstract term, but really it is doing something intelligent with the data. So the meter measures something, sensor senses something, the network communicates it. Now you've got all this great data. What can you do with it? It could be as simple as, here's an accurate bill. Regina used this many kilowatts, and therefore her electricity bill is this much. But it also could be much higher value services. Where are there preventive maintenance issues? Where is there likely to be an outage? Where could there be a potential safety consideration? Where is a pipe leaking? All of these types of things can be pulled out of the data, and that's really what an outcome is. It's harnessing the data to develop better insights, whether they be grid side, infrastructure side, or whether there's helping the consumer truly understand how they are using the product.
Wow, those are all important services and benefits. And that leads me to my next point. So Itron, as we know, is at the forefront of advancing very important technologies, as you mentioned. And among those technologies is distributed intelligence, such as edge computing. So can you talk a little bit more and describe how this technology specifically is beneficial for utilities and consumers?
Sure, happy to. It's something that we've just started working with customers on during the last year and a half or so and getting it into the field. Having a meter on the side of the house that has the ability to accept downloadable applications into it to allow new and interesting measurements to be made, looking for different signatures. So if a utility has a rapidly growing population of EVs, of electric vehicles, well, that's a very large variable load. At some point, if you have too many EVs in one cul-de-sac, the transformer is going to be overloaded. So from a utility standpoint, you can start to understand how to size the transformer before you would have an unfortunate outage because you had too many people coming home from work someday post-pandemic and charging their car all at the same time. So I've given you one simple example of being able to look for certain signatures and then being able to report that back and understand how to proactively use the infrastructure that's out there. The grid itself, if I think about it from an electricity point of view, is becoming a more and more complex set of machinery. The more renewables that are brought onto to the generation side for very logical sustainability reasons, the more variability you have on the generation side. How do you balance supply and demand? How do you get the best insight into what's going on into the overall operation of the grid? How can you help consumers understand how they are using the product? There's a huge service imbalance between how we as consumers today interact with various services in our life and oftentimes how we deal with our utilities, even though it's such an important part of what we do. If you ordered your dinner last night from Uber Eats, you knew where the driver was and when they were bringing it to your doorstep and how much it was going to cost. And in real time, they're 1 mile away. Now that they're at my flat, it's here. That same level of interaction with the service, you oftentimes don't have that as a consumer as you deal with the utility. So how can you understand how you're using that product so you can optimize it, save money as a consumer, and understand how to interact, have a very positive customer experience. So it's not, hey, the only time I speak with my utility is when the lights are out and I'm ringing them up to find out when it's coming back. That changing that model and doing it in a very cost-effective way is best served with software. It's best served in a way to make the infrastructure and assets that are purchased and deployed an agile way to really make it accessible to everybody and make it a cost-effective solution. So those are some of the advances that are just starting to happen and something that I think you'll see grow in the years ahead for the benefit of the consumer as well as the utility itself.
Well, that all sounds quite fascinating. And just talking about the accessibility part and helping consumers really understand how to better interact with their utilities, I think that's a huge undertaking.
It is, and again, I think there's a very noble outcome on the other side of it, helping the consumer really understand what their usage patterns are and what drives the costs that they bear. That helps them be more efficient and cuts down on an awful lot of churn all the way through the system, which I know regulators grapple with quite a bit.
Okay, so you've written about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And you've even described it on your blog as a turning point in American history regarding infrastructure and energy. And that all sounded very interesting as I read through it. So can you talk to us more about its significance for the utility industry?
Sure. Let me start with maybe some of the big trends that are out there that are putting pressure on the utility industry at large. There's infrastructure pressures, aging infrastructure, or more cybersecurity risks that are out there. There are more renewables, as we talked about earlier, but there's a lot of work to be done in the infrastructure to improve service reliability, resilience, and effectiveness. There are environmental pressures, more and more climate disruption, more wildfires in the West, and hurricanes of major proportion in the Southeast, and ice storms in Texas, for heaven's sake. These types of things put enormous pressure on the utility industry. And the third is that social aspect that I talked about with my silly example about ordering dinner from a delivery service. But those pressures are coming to bear on our customers. And unfortunately, we have technologies to help overcome those things, but there's always this question of how to jumpstart and how to fund all of the work that needs to get done. I think the IIJA, the Infrastructure Jobs Act, that is now law, and what we should start to see the benefit of it. That package, if you will, has a fair amount of investment in roads and bridges and ports, which are super important, but it also has provisions that read directly onto the electricity grid and the water systems that we care about. So we very much stand ready to work with the customers, the regulators, to allow us to quickly apply these interesting new technologies, taking advantage of the programs that are out there with things like the Smart Grid Matching Grant to really give a lift off and deploy these things faster to get the benefits. Some of the provisions in the bill are very similar to what we saw back in ARRA, the 09-ish kind of bill with that Smart Grid Matching Grant, and that's something that our customers availed themselves to the great benefit of the grid resiliency and reliability, but also the benefit of the consumer.
You covered so much right there. And I want to talk for a minute about some of the lessons and challenges that we saw throughout this year in 2021 and how we surmounted some of those challenges that will make utilities and regulators alike even better prepared for 2022. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I think that clearly it was a bit of a crazy year for everyone, and on top of a crazy year in 2020 where COVID really turned things upside down. So what we saw very much was a need to continue to automate basic services to the extent that basic procedures that for all of the businesses that can work better through things like pandemics when they're automated. If you don't want to have your employees out roaming around gathering up data, why not do it from behind a pane of glass? And whether the pane of glass is in the office or working from home, either case can apply. So a real push for automating more and more business processes was clearly part of what we saw in the last couple of years. The supply chain right now is extremely tight as demand went down, and then it came roaring back for many industries. So working with our supply chain partners, working with our customers, and even working with regulators to work through the bottlenecks in the supply chain is a challenge which is still with us and ongoing. Light at the end of the tunnel during 2022, but we've got a couple more quarters, I think, where that's going to be a real topic to think about. And the third major challenge, which everybody has been grappling with and is in the news quite often, is staffing turnover. A lot of people have taken the pandemic as an opportunity to rethink what they want to do, but how we keep everyone focused on the purpose of what we do as an industry, I think, is a real opportunity and something great for our industry. We do so much societal good and good things for the planet, and that's something that people can really feel good about. It's not just a job, it's leaving the world in a better place from where we were before. So some of the challenges and some of the things that we've been working on: supply chain resiliency, making sure our purpose is very clear, engaging closely with our customers and stakeholders to make sure that all the projects we take on, we make sure are wildly successful is really what 2021 was about for me.
Those are all very important. And when you talk about the supply chain, I know that the supply chain issue is very important as it relates to cybersecurity. And that's something that regulators are constantly looking at, and something that NARUC has even written about. So do you have confidence in our supply chain right now?
I do, from a cybersecurity standpoint. I was fortunate enough to do a fireside chat with Judy at the annual meeting of NARUC just a couple of weeks ago, and this was a topic that we touched on. I think that supply chain security, really thinking through all aspects of security, is an ever growing challenge. It's one that we have to keep raising the bar on ourselves, because the bad actors out there, the people who want to do naughty things, are going to continue to chase after it. So it's not something that we want to be overly confident about, but I think we can feel good about the steps that we're taking. And raising the awareness in all of this, I think, is absolutely critical. We've got to talk about it, because most often, sadly, the weak link in every cybersecurity strategy is us. It's humans.
Right.
We do the wrong thing, not for any malicious intent. We click on the wrong button, the wrong link, and it opens us up for many bad things that can happen. So maintaining awareness. From a regulator point of view, asking all of the companies that you're working with as you're working on rate cases, how they're thinking about cybersecurity, how they're working on training for their teams to make sure we maintain that awareness, I think, are the good hygiene practices that everybody can continue to improve our game around.
Wow, we really covered a lot in such a brief time. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I'm just delighted to have the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you very much for granting me this platform. I very much want to extend the hand to all of the commissioners, to the extent that we can ever be a resource, just as a sounding board for ideas. We're happy to do so, not to push an agenda, but really to be a discussion partner and make sure that we're all seeing the problems that are out there through the same lens. And when we join forces and think about it in the same way, understanding the needs of the stakeholders, I think we come up with a tremendous outcome. So please use us as a resource. I'm happy to engage. I'm grateful for the partnership with NARUC. I think we can do a lot of great things in the years ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. This has been a great discussion. And again, we do appreciate the support and the partnership that we've enjoyed with Itron.
Thank you, well, and have a great holiday.
Thanks.
Bye now.